Hello. In today's video, we will find out what the Japanese and the Russians wanted from Stony Stratford, plot the route of a 17th century pub crawl, honour a 13th century queen, and visit the site of an incident that arguably precipitated the dawn of the first Elizabethan age. And lastly, but not least, pop into the baker's to get a loaf. Join me as we walk through the history on the high street of my hometown, Stony Stratford. Stony Stratford is situated along Watling Street, a major Roman highway from London to Holyhead. The floodplains and marshland around Stony Stratford made traversing this area tricky in bad weather. Roman pottery, coins, silver and other artefacts have been found, and it has been suggested that there may well have been a military post at Stony Stratford. Romans would have marched through the countryside in legions, passing along the straight road of Watling Street, now the A5, and over the River Ouse on their way north. The name Stony Stratford is Anglo-Saxon in origin and means stony ford on a Roman road. Although Stony Stratford was not itself mentioned in the Domesday Book, the settlement was forming, and in 1194, at the time of King Richard I, it first appeared in records when a market charter was granted. For our tour today, I will head north along the London Road, through Horsefair Green, the Market Square and down the High Street to the bridge over the River Ouse. I will then return along the High Street up to the Wolverton Road, where we will conclude our tour. On the right is the London Road Cemetery. This parcel of land was donated by the John Radcliffe Trust, Wolverton Estate, in 1870 to the St Mary's Parish. A short walk on from the cemetery are the London Road allotments. This is a 65-acre site with 168 plots, managed by the Stony Stratford Allotment and Leisure Gardeners Association. In the UK, allotments are small parcels of land rented to individuals, usually for the purpose of growing food crops. As you would expect from a town situated in the middle of the country, as far away from the sea as you can probably get, Stony Stratford was once famous for the construction of ocean-going vessels, which were supplied to various clients including the Russian and Japanese navies. Currently, there is little evidence remaining to indicate that this was once a bustling boatyard, but the Watling Works, owned by Edward Hayes, was sited here. The works was well known for constructing small, powerful boats. To launch them, they were transported by trailer, towed by steam engine, for 2 miles to a slipway on the Grand Union Canal at Old Stratford, Hayes Wharf. The boats were dismantled and towed along the waterways to London for refitting, and would then sail to their destination elsewhere in the world. Larger vessels were assembled in prefabricated pieces, pioneering stuff at that time. Right next door to the boatyard is York House Community Centre. Originally called Clarence House, it was built as a family home for a local banker in 1850. Now it is a community centre with over 40 regular use groups and a wide variety of clubs and classes. Next, we reach the Swinfen Harris Church Hall, a beautiful former parish hall in Stony Stratford. The hall was built in 1892 by the famous architect Swinfen Harris. The Greek Orthodox community of Milton Keynes acquired the hall in August 2010. If we turn left opposite the garage, we'll come to Horsefair Green. This was once a site for Friday horse trading, has also hosted timber milling and public events, Today it serves as a central open space in Stony Stratford, famous for Folk on the Green. Walking up the green towards Silver Street, you will come to the War Memorial Garden, built in 1922. Inside you will find a medieval stepping stone from the river crossing before the building of the bridge. As we turn right out of Horsefair Green and head along Silver Street, almost unnoticed stands a small building which for almost 100 years between 1864 and 1958 served as Stony Stratford's fire station. Stony Stratford suffered a vast number of devastating fires, not least the Great Fire in 1742. The residents later raised the money to build and maintain this fire station. Not too much further along Silver Street and we come to Market Square. In common with many small towns in England, the hub of town activity was the Market Square. The weekly market now takes place behind the Cock Hotel, and Stony Stratford's original marketplace is now a car park. However, it is closed for special events during Stony Live, regular classic car shows, the Lantern Parade and switching on of the lights at Christmas. In the square is an oak tree planted in 2007 that replaced an old elm that was killed by Dutch elm disease. It famously sheltered John Wesley, the 18th century Methodist, when he preached here on one of his visits to Stony Stratford. In the market square is where our 17th century pub crawl would begin. According to a map from 1680, there were 3 inns in this square. In this direction to the west was the King's Head, established in 1640. There is also the Crown, established in 1666 and used as the King Henry pub in the 1987 film With Meadow and I. Next door, now Market House, would have been the White Hart, established in 1657. As we walk across the square, we can see Cox and Robertson Pharmacy, that also appeared in With Meadow and I as the Penrith Tea Room. Past the pharmacy, we leave Market Square through the churchyard of St Mary and St Giles, with its 15th century tower, and along Church Street into the High Street. Number 81 on the High Street would be the next stop on our pub crawl. In 1680, this would have been the Talbot Inn. The next pub on our drunken walk through the 17th century would have been the Cross Keys Inn, dating back to 1485. The next stop on our journey northwards along the High Street will be the bridge that crosses the River Ouse. This marks the boundary between Buckinghamshire and Northamptonshire, as well as the town limits of Old Stratford and Stony Stratford. As we walk past Bridge Meadow, you will notice a lot of trees. The willows grown in this area are called bat willows because they are still used in India today to make cricket bats. In the meadow, at the north end of the town, you can see the bridge that stands where the old Roman ford would have been. In November 1830, the Crown Prince coach was caught by the flooded river here as it crossed the old wooden bridge. The horses were drowned whilst the passengers hung onto the coach until they were rescued. The stone bridge was built in 1833 out of Derbyshire millstone grit and replaced the wooden structure that had collapsed. From here, we're going to turn around and head southwards along the High Street back into the town centre. As we walk up from the bridge towards the town, we can see a private house which was once one of Stony Stratford's many inns. The location of the old corner entrance is easily distinguishable, and still projecting from the wall is the arm from which the inn sign used to hang. It was latterly the Barley Mow, but is thought to be the site of the Grilk's Inn, the first inn in Stony Stratford to be mentioned in a document from 1317. The Barley Mow was also formerly known as the Angel, one of two pubs of that name in the town. The other was where Coffridge Close is now. It was said that the town of Stony Stratford was blessed with an angel at either end. When Queen Eleanor, wife of Edward I, died in 1290, he had a monumental cross raised at every point that her coffin rested on its journey to London. One of these places was Stony Stratford. The cross survived until 1646, before being destroyed in the Civil War. This plaque marks the area where it was. The College of St Paul, still sometimes referred to as Fegan's Home, has in fact had a number of uses in its lifetime, having been variously a school, a cigar factory, a boys' home, a Franciscan school, a branch of an international finance company, and now an Indian restaurant. It was built in 1863 for the then vast sum of £40,000. 30 slum dwellings, some lanes, and the old Horseshoe Inn, dating from 1529, were cleared to make way for the new school. The Horseshoe Inn would have been one of the stopping points on our 17th century pub crawl. A little further along the High Street, at number 107, is Rothenberg House, designed by the distinguished architect Edward Swinfen Harris as his home in 1892. Visible through the houses here stands a solitary church tower surrounded by an old graveyard. This is the remains of St Mary Magdalene Church that was destroyed in the fire of 1742. This building would have been the next stop on our pub crawl, the Swan Inn, dating from 1526. The next two hotels on the High Street would also have featured on our 17th century pub crawl. The Cock Hotel is the largest and arguably the most famous old coaching inn stroke hotel in Stony, with a history going back centuries. John Cock was the landlord in about 1480, and the hotel takes its name from him, not the bird on the sign. In the 17th century, the Cock could sleep 20 people and provide stabling for their horses. By the next century, this capacity had doubled. The Cock Hotel was rebuilt after the Great Fire in 1742 with increased capacity, a new frontage, and the wonderful wrought ironwork bearing the hotel sign that we can still see today. A major reason for the hotel's growth was the rise of the coaching trade in the 18th century, and Stony's prominence as a stopover point for famous coaches such as the Manchester Flyer. Local legend has it that the Cock Hotel is the cock of the nursery rhyme Ride a Cock Horse to Banbury Cross. The famous rival to the Cock Hotel was its near neighbour, the Bull, established in 1609. It was here that the Great Fire started in 1742. During stops overnight or for meals en route, news and gossip would be passed on. Like all good stories, as they were passed on, they were exaggerated and padded out as they travelled between these two famous inns. And so the phrase, a cock and bull story, came to be applied to any such exaggerated tale. As we walk further southwards along the High Street, we come to another two inns that would be included on our pub crawl. The White Horse, which dates back to 1540, and the George Hotel from 1609. Unusually, you have to take steps downward to enter the George, because the floor inside is still set at the same level of the High Street when the inn was opened. Last night, I hear, they lay at Northampton. At Stony Stratford will they be tonight. Shakespeare, King Richard III, Act 2, Scene 4. Prince Edward V, aged 12, and Sir Richard Grey stopped in Stony while travelling from Ludlow to London for Edward's proposed coronation in 1483. They spent the night at the Rose and Crown Inn, the building we see here, where Richard, Duke of Gloucester, captured them. Lord Grey was executed, while Edward was taken to the Tower of London and later allegedly murdered with his brother. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, became King Richard III on the 25th of June, 1483. His reign ended quickly when he was killed in 1485 at the Battle of Bosworth Field, the last English king to die in combat. His successor, Henry Earl of Richmond, became Henry VII, establishing the Tudor dynasty and paving the way for the Elizabethan age, the origins of which traced back to a room in a former inn here in Stony Stratford. Coffridge Close is a shopping precinct which stands on the site of several much older properties, including the Angel Hotel. The Angel was demolished in October 1972 and may be gone but is not forgotten. Its frontage was saved and taken to Milton Keynes Museum, where it was restored. The Angel now heads the museum's street of shops. This picture at the entrance to Coffridge Close is a memorial to Belgian Fabien Bayet, a big issue seller who was a familiar sight in Milton Keynes and Stony Stratford with his beloved dog, Pippet Whippet. Most people knew him as Belgium the Waffle. The main road here heads off east to Wolverton. In 1886, with the rise of the Wolverton Works and the increase in the population of both Wolverton and Stony Stratford, some of the world's largest tram cars, each holding 100 people, began operating between Stony Stratford and Wolverton. And because of that, this became one of the most photographed spots in Stony Stratford. On the corner opposite is the old schoolhouse pub, formerly the Plough, which was built between 1871 to 1873, originally as a Church of England schoolhouse, designed by Edward Swinfen Harris, the architect. That concludes our walk for today. I hope you've enjoyed it rather than endured it, and that it inspires you to visit the beautiful and historic town of Stony Stratford. Now, about that loaf. Oh yeah, can I get a large white tin sliced, please? That's it, thanks, sir.
Yeah, that's what we're free.
Thanks very much. Have a nice day.